Students, I am here with someone super special that I actually met online through the world of LinkedIn. This is Patricia, and she has a wide variety of experience in jobs in a really cool field, a lot overlapping with the world of social media. If you find her profile online, things like Google, Twitter, and also VSCO come up to the forefront. And I'm just really excited to hear about your world of public policy and safety and all of that. So Patricia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. And I have a little additional guest joining us too. He's got a lot of experience in online safety too. So he's excited to contribute as much as he can.
Now, what is your friend's name, just so we properly address your friend?
He is Bloom.
Bloom. All right, Bloom. Well, thanks for joining us with Patricia as well. We're very grateful to have you. So, Patricia, could we possibly just start with, I'd love to kind of hear your background story. I think students gain a lot from just hearing like where you started from school to where you're at now. Could we go through a little quick snippet of that, of how you are, where you are today? Or if you want to start with where you are and get there, however is natural for you, but we'd love to hear your story.
Perfect. And it is a bit of an unusual story, so I think it's worth telling. I studied translation from the age of 10. I was very interested in languages and linguistics. And I told my parents that I wanted to be a translator when I grew up. I said that at age 10, and my parents took me very seriously, which I appreciate. And so they started sending me abroad so that I could learn English and French. And I spent a lot of time in England, in Canada, in Ireland. And during my time in Ireland, I realized that the tech industry was starting to take off. So Google had just established headquarters in Dublin, the capital of Ireland, and Microsoft was there too. Also pharmaceutical companies and other like chip makers like Intel. So I thought it was a really unusual situation where Ireland was becoming kind of like what you expect from the Bay Area in the San Francisco area in the US. And sure enough, after I finished my studies, I decided to try my luck. I put my resume on a website called Monster. And shortly after, I got a contact from Google asking if I would be interested in joining what was called at the time web spam. And I'm very old. I'm 36 years old. So this is 2006. I'm fresh out of college. And really, abuse online really looked like manipulation of the search engines. So essentially, let's say that I want to buy a house and I'm looking to get a good mortgage, and I type into Google mortgage, and banks would hide keywords like mortgage a lot on their website so that they will rank higher. And that's really as complex as spam got, because social media wasn't really around. Facebook was just starting to take off, but it was only available for students of universities. So really, that's how I got started. And as time went by, Facebook contacted me and asked me if I wanted to join them as they were setting up the European headquarters in Dublin. And of course, with Facebook came the ability to upload photos, to upload comments. And so we started seeing abuse at a much bigger scale. And we had to make very interesting decisions, like what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable, how do we protect people? You know, what happens when maybe I am having a little bit of banter with my sister on Facebook, but that banter upsets her? Like, what should Facebook be doing in those situations? And from then, really, just it took like a life of its own. And after working at Facebook for 4.5 years, I joined Twitter. Twitter was also getting started at the time. So I always went from, like company that got big to smaller company that got big to smaller company that got big. The challenges have been the same. It's regardless of the type of content that you can upload, whether it's a video, a photo, or comment, it's what should we be doing with that content. And I've been really lucky to work on building the teams that are at the other end of the screen when you select report abuse. So training them on how to react to negative content, making sure that we are staffed correctly to keep up with all of the reports of abuse that are coming in. And I feel like that's where the languages that I had studied all those years and my background in translation came in handy, because languages have a really big impact on abuse, and abuse looks different in every language. So I've been really lucky to be able to work in the French market, the Italian market, the Canadian French-speaking market, and it's been really interesting. After many years working in Europe, I moved to the US with Twitter, and now I am with VSCO. So VSCO is really popular with young people, and I want to make sure that we're creating a safe space so that you don't have to worry about follower count or how many people are liking your photos and your content. You can come into VSCO actually as a mental break. It's like mental health break. Now I'm gonna feel better about the world by coming in and seeing like really good, positive, creative content.
Wow, that is quite a story. You've gone from a lot of well-known companies, and through the doors opened from being able to translate different languages. That's right. Incredible, the different opportunities in that. So you started, forgive me, were you originally from Spain?
That's right. Yeah, I was born in Spain, and I studied in Spain until I started going abroad to learn those languages at age 12. But my family are still in Spain, and I still, whenever I want to see my family, I fly to Spain.
Oh, that's amazing. And now you're in the San Francisco Bay Area. Welcome to the US,
Thank you. It's really cool.
So this is a really cool job that I bet a lot of students have never even thought about. And I love how you said it. So when there's a report of abuse on VSCO or wherever, when they click that button, that goes somewhere, and then a group of people have to decide what the next step is.
Exactly.
And could we kind of go into, for you and your job then, since you're in that area of abuse, and like you said, trying to make this a safer environment for the user, could you talk about what a day in the life of Patricia is like when you get to work in that? Are you in meetings? Are you contacting users? Are you talking to governments? I'm just curious what that job is like.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I do a little bit of everything that you just mentioned. Normally, our days really start with looking at all of those reports of abuse. And I'm really lucky to have an incredible team, a lot of them young people too, that are like just coming out of college. So, know that is an option for everybody if you're interested on working in online safety. And I spent a lot of time thinking about policies, like content policies. What are we going to allow, or are we not going to allow? And I train that team very regularly. We meet weekly to discuss cases that are maybe a little bit gray area, like this doesn't really fit in this policy. How should we deal with it? Because that really helps us continue to develop and get better. And so our days really start with looking at, we call them queues, like the queues of abuse reports. And those queues really are organized around the type of abuse that the user has detected. So they may report bullying, they may report harassment, they may report nudity that they don't want to see on the site. And so we go into those different buckets, and we act on all of the abuse reports. If the team has any questions or cases they want to discuss, they can escalate them to me, where then I will go in, I'll weigh in on what we should do. And once we've cleared those queues, what I tend to focus a lot on too is how can we develop the product? So, you mentioned the report button. That report button that looks very simple takes a lot of time to design. And the way it looks, is it round? Is it square? Is it in bold, like the word report? All of those decisions actually have a really big impact on whether people are going to click on it or not. So I work a lot with engineering, and that's kind of like the second half of my day will be, what do we need to be developing? This morning, I actually started the day by talking to a company that is helping us detect abuse. And detecting abuse is very challenging, but now we have artificial intelligence and machine learning that can really help us detect the abuse. So I'll give you one example. What if you upload a photo of me and you tag me? So you say, Patricia's in this photo, and I don't like that photo. Machine learning can help us say, well, if Patricia, who is tagged in that photo, reports that photo, maybe the photo should be taken down. So machine learning can help go through all of our reports and flag some of them based on criteria that we're given the algorithm. So a lot of my day also goes into working with engineering to develop those algorithms, design the way the interface looks. And I would say the last really big piece of my days is then working with governments, regulators, and a lot of nonprofits. We're very lucky to have nonprofits like I Can Help, who ensure that everybody can know the rules for every site, how to report abuse. If you ever need more support, they can provide you with that support. So a lot of my day is going around those points of contact and letting them know, like, hey, right now I'm working on a safety center and I'm really hoping that it will be launched in June. Do you think that it's a good idea to develop a guide for educators or a guide for parents or a guide for young people? And so like collaborating with them and also educating them about what we're currently working on.
Wow. Okay. So first of all, it sounds like there's never a boring moment in your job. There's
Never.
a lot of different, wow. So you wear a lot of different hats. You have a lot of different jobs and areas in that. Maybe this is a great segue to go into what are some of the skills or that you find are really helpful or beneficial for you to do your job to the best of your ability that maybe our students could learn from and think about, do I have some of those skills or can I work on those?
I love that question. And I think the number one skill set that you need is empathy. You need to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes and to understand how certain content may upset them or, may cause them concern. Because if you don't have that empathy, at the end of the day, we're working to support people. And if you lack that empathy, it's going to be really hard for you to do this job. You could be very dismissive and say, well, that is just an ugly photo. Why would she be upset about it? Instead of thinking, well, yeah, maybe that photo really upset her. What is the context? What is the reason for that? So really empathy, I think, is the number one skill that you need. Being very analytical too. So thinking about cause and consequence. I'll give you a really good example of this. When I was working at Facebook, we had this report button that was unwanted content. And so you could report something as unwanted. And we didn't really do a good job at explaining what we meant by unwanted content, which really was more somebody spamming you, like constantly contacting you, and you just don't want that unwanted contact. However, when we translated those words into different languages, they were interpreted very differently. And so we saw in certain countries like Spain, from one day to the next, we started getting a ton of reports of abuse. And when we looked at the reports, we weren't really understanding why it was being reported. Oh. And actually it was content that they didn't want to see. So I'm on my timeline, I'm on my newsfeed, and I'm seeing content that is like, oh, yeah, this is my mom sharing a really boring quiz. She thinks it's hilarious, but I don't like it. Unwanted content. And so really like thinking about what may be causing this, being really analytical on your day-to-day is like, oh, I'm seeing something that is a little bit odd. It's a little bit different from what I see every day. What is causing this? How can I tackle the root cause rather than just doing a quick fix that may need more work in the long run? So being very analytical, I think is important. Being very curious too. So being curious about different cultures, how people interact online, figuring out if we're all using the internet in the same way, having a lot of conversations with different people, like how do you use the online space? What do you like about it? What do you like about VSCO? What do you not like? What would you like to see? So that curiosity can really help you and be a very strong skill set on the day-to-day. And then finally, I would say being thorough. One aspect of my job that really attracted me to this sector is I feel like I'm a little bit of an internet sleuth. Like I'm constantly like investigating things. And if you are like that, if you like mysteries and puzzles, investigating abuse can be a lot like it. It can be like, I'm missing some context. Why did this person report this person? Let me like do some more digging into it. So if you really like mysteries, puzzles, if you're like very analytical, this is kind of like being a cop. It's like you're like a bit like the cop of the internet. You're also like the judge of the internet because you're deciding what you will allow, what won't be allowed on the site. So it's a very like fascinating space, and a combination of those skills can make you like a very strong performer in the safety field.
Thank you. All those are great suggestions and pieces of advice and great skills for not just your area, but I think a lot of areas. Having empathy is beneficial in so many places in that, and being curious. So thank you for bringing those up. If I could bug you for another quick question, when the teams that you're working with in abuse, are they coming into the field with certain types of education? I know you said you had an interesting path through translation that got you here. Is there other areas that seem to lend itself like, oh, if you go into this in school, you can get into the tech world, into this abuse policy area?
Yeah, so I think the answer is no. I've a lot of my colleagues, I have a colleague that is a doctor, medical doctor.
Okay.
And he, after going through med school and working as a doctor, he realized that he didn't really like working in medicine, and he's really, really good at building tools. So he built this very neat tool where we can compare the same screen in multiple users. And so he's somebody who's like really good at building things. He's like a creator. And so that's what he does. He builds tools for my team. I also work with a lot of former lawyers, so people that really like the legal space, did a lot of work on figuring out what should be illegal speech, where should the liability fall, like the companies that host this content, should they be liable if something happens? So a lot of like former lawyers work on this. Certainly I've come across more linguists, so people that had worked, linguists tend to go into localization. So there's a really big range of jobs within localization for websites, like the translation of the buttons, the translation of the blog posts that we put out there. But a lot of them that start in localization actually end up working on safety because they are helping me translate certain aspects of my job, of the safety work, and then they really like it. So I think it's like really, I've seen people from all sectors come into this, and also I've seen a lot of people that haven't even gone to college, and like they did a couple of years of college, they didn't like it as much, and then they got really lucky and started working for tech companies, and they just like kept going. My recommendation is always, of course, to finish your education if you can. Like the more education you get in this life, the better. But yeah, there's just many different paths that you can take to reach this field, which I think it's really cool. I come from Europe, where normally what you studied is going to really dictate what you work on. And I'll tell you, my family were shocked when I told them I wasn't going to be a translator. That's just not how things work. So I think it's something really cool about the US and the US business world, that we're really open to people experimenting in their careers.
So thank you for shedding light on that as well. And I think that's great. And you having more people from different ideas and backgrounds just brings up different ways to think, which I think probably gives you strength in your team. So that's really cool to hear about. So you had this really cool journey, and you're here at VSCO, and you're helping users be safer in that. Throughout your journey, if we could just end on this last note for my students, are there any things that you would give your younger high school self for advice that, or that you're glad you did, or you wish you would have, that can maybe help them as they start making their transition into the adult working world?
Fantastic question. And I would say one thing that I liked about myself as a young student, and even as right now, is perseverance. So if you're passionate about something and you work hard on it, but do know that you have to work hard on it, and that's going to mean sacrifices. It's going to mean that maybe I can't go out hang out with my friends today because I do have that French test tomorrow and I have to study to pass it. So perseverance, it's really important. The one thing I would maybe tell myself is don't stress out as much. I tend to stress about everything. I was like that too in school, in college. I would be constantly catastrophizing, like, what is going to go wrong? And when that goes wrong, what am I going to do? When the reality is that maybe taking a positive outlook, there's a lot of things that we can control. And so worrying about things that are outside of our control doesn't really help. And if you've done your work, if you've studied, you will get through that test. If you have worked hard, you will get through that work assignment. And all of that lost sleep, if I could go back and just tell myself, what are your passions? Like, I love reading. Maybe spend a little bit more time reading before bedtime rather than sit there like worrying about what am I going to do wrong? Oh my goodness, this is going to happen. So worry less, trust your output, your work, and persevere. And I think you will be in a really good path to success.
Well said. You're a motivational speaker, Patricia. We really appreciate it. That was wonderful advice. Thank you. Well, on that note, I just want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you for your time. I know when I first met you in this virtual world, you opened this whole world of behind media that I never even considered. All the people working constantly trying to keep us safe, trying to keep unsafe or unhealthy things by us, and how gray so many areas are, especially when you're talking about worldwide, different cultures, different points of view. So it was mind-blowing to me. And I know that some students listening now are thinking, hey, I could get on that too, make this world of social media a little bit safer, a little bit better, a little bit happier, and use my skills. So thank you for kind of igniting and planting that seed, and for just giving us a little taste of your everyday life. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Phil. I love, talking to your students this way. And I'm also always here to help. If anybody ever has any questions or wants to talk more, I love to do that. So please, by all means, let's do this again and connect me with as many students as, want to talk to me, and know that there is a place for you in tech if you want to work on this space. There is a place if you're a positive person with a lot of empathy. There's a place for you in this space, and I'm just glad to be able to make the connection.